I know you have mentioned it a couple of times already, that the current relationship tends to be very, very tactical, and it's limited to maybe order receipt and order fulfillment. But have you started seeing at least some trends, or are there some instances where the brand owners are very open with their uh, plans in terms of either product launches, or they trying to venture into new markets which will require some additional capabilities from the CMOs, or even vice versa, where CMOs are discussing about their site expansion plans, or they are trying to bring some new capabilities, meaning, hey, we were only oral solid specialists up to now, but now we are bringing sterile injectables. So are there these discussions happening with the brand owners and the CMOs, where they are being a little open about their business expansion plans, at least from a perspective of keeping each other ready with regards to what to expect? Do we see that happening, or not yet?
Yeah, listen, there's a lot of IP concern, right? So you got to be really careful about what you say and who you say it to, right? A lot of this stuff's public, but a lot of it's also, things that are kept kind of private and very specific. Your approved supplier list and your, approved vendor list. That these are situations that you have a relationship currently already, whether it's a big one or a small one, is something that you work on to develop. I can say on the CDMO side, there is a lot of, hey, we can do this or we can do that. And when I think, I'm trying to remember back a few years ago working within the CDMO with a European customer, and going to that customer and being open and honest with what we're doing. Hey, we have a new capability we're working on. We can do A, B, and C. Do you guys have anything in the pipeline or anything we could start? So that's part of the sales side of the CDMO, and I'm sure there's tons of that happening that are not relevant because you have someone that's their job to work on that, right? But I'm thinking from another perspective of doing our S&OP process, and we could share as well long-term growth and not necessarily new products, but existing products or new applications, 502 BVs and things of that nature, which could help us. And do they have that technology to help us? So I think there is a two-way street on this one for sure, but I think it's really with trusted vendors, right? And there is a lot of solicitation out there in the industry as well.
Right, right, right,
Yeah.
right. Because I mean, you hit some important points here, right? Because there are so many times when, for example, if you're working on a launch, your launch dates could keep shifting, or the quantity with which you want to launch could keep shifting, or
Yeah.
you could suddenly win NIV award, or you could be losing an award. So the more you are open with your with CMOs, of course, keeping in mind the IP concerns,
Yep.
whatever you can share in a legal and compliant way with your partners, I think that will go a long way in getting to the patients sooner and in an efficient way.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's interesting though, but one of the difficulties also with that is if you're starting something and you have like a 3-batch validation or some submission batch, from a CDO perspective, that's not profitable. That's short term, and it gets in the way typically of your normal course of business. So things like that, depending on the CDMO, may not be a prioritization, and that's where the relationship and partnership work in, because I can't tell you how many times we had a one batch run, which was supposed to happen. And then over the next 3 to 6 months, we kept on pushing it because something else came in that was more attractive financially. Right. And so there, again, this is where relationships and being less transactional and more open and honest can really help us. Because those little, Sandoz is a big company, but some of the little, startups, they struggle to get this from CDMOs. And again, they sign up for one batch or something like that. It's 3,000 vials or something tiny. And it's a lot of time and effort for potentially nothing that you might see a return on in 3-4 years, So there's a balance here that has to happen. And, understanding from a CDMO perspective, how important that batch is for that company. And that might change the world someday. It might cure cancer for a patient, and a lot of those transactional type environments at the beginning turn into long-term relationships.
yeah, no. I mean, I think, I mean, you keep re-emphasizing, the more strategic relationship you have, the less these problems will become obvious. I mean, you probably are hitting the nail there, that you need
Yep.
to get into that right relationship so that you can, I mean, these questions will automatically be solved. So I mean, getting a little more tactical, right? I just had one other question that I've always seen, that I have seen there are a lot of organizations who have started this digital integration journey. They do a couple of pilots, they roll it out for maybe a key supplier here or there, or maybe for some initial transactions like, hey, PO act, maybe for an invoice. But then that project stalls, and they are never able to replicate that to a broader scale of suppliers, or maybe they are never able to get it beyond basic transactions. What are some of the reasons why these initiatives fail, or maybe they just stall, maybe not fail, but they just stall and they never go to an industrial scale, and they just get stuck at pilot only level.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I mean, listen, there's a lot of reasons why stuff like this happens. You know, it's usually financially driven,
Mm,
and expertise driven. And let's understand that, you know, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, the nice to have stuff gets pushed off a lot of times, right? Or the you know, the return on investment isn't fully there, right? So,
mm,
you know, understanding if something works takes time. It takes, you know, understanding, you know, and sometimes people can't wrap their head around new, you know, technology. You know, you'll have someone say, I mean, I was part of a proof of concept for, you know, when I worked at Teva on, you know, master data management system, MDM system. And half the people, it was new to me. I mean, it's a new technology 20 years ago, having an MDM system, right? But understanding the benefit of it was great. But man, what a long process that is to go from start to something live. And as you dig into it, you start realizing, man, I have a data problem, and I'm not ready for this. That happens a lot. You know, it sometimes you can't jump in the Lamborghini. You got to start with the Toyota and drive down the. You know, these are things that I think people get really excited for, then realize they're not ready for it. And it takes a good, I'll say a good person, a good leader to understand. Yeah, I want that, but I'm not there yet. I don't have the master data. I don't have the expertise. I don't have the funding. I don't have all of those things. And really, to me, that's why a lot of these fail. And if they do go through them, and you know, they'll fail for the reasons I just mentioned. If you can't, if you know, the master data is usually the most difficult and piece that really helps drive these things. You know, and if you're, you know, I've been in this industry long enough to know, say, oh, our standards, we know they're wrong, so we just do this. Well, why don't you fix them? You know, like I've heard this in like every company I've worked at, that our standards, you know, it's a long process. We do it once a year, and last year we never got to it. I mean, there's situations like that where we, you know, it's self-inducing, and good leadership has to change that and understand that. But this is why these sort of situations fails. You might put together an entire BI solution, but you know, garbage in, garbage out, and it ends up being the reason instead of the root cause of what's fixing it. So to me, that's something that I hear a lot of, and a lot of times there are a lot of good consultants out there and good salesmen that get people all excited and drop something off that they don't need or don't know how to use, and then they end up walking away.
yeah. I mean, one of the things that you mentioned, right? Master data, I think hits the nerve a lot, because it's probably one of the most underappreciated and underrated elements of your operations. People think that, hey, they just take it for granted. They don't pay enough attention to that, and I think that also drives a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of inaccuracies. And as you mentioned,
Yeah.
that if you don't do enough due diligence in your process, you might start off on a pilot, it might run for a while, but not doing this due diligence, not having your master data ready, can lead to those failures. So it's I mean, it's not
Right.
an easy lift. You probably need to like be persistent and be very meticulous in terms of how you expand your pilot to a larger scale. So that's a very interesting thought there. But let's assume for a moment that there are certain organizations who were able to get past that POC phase, and they were able to scale it up to to a broader set of trading partners that they are working with. How would you determine that you have reached a reasonable level of digital integration? What are some of the methodologies that you have in mind to measure whether you have reached certain maturity level in your digital integration, and now maybe the incremental effort I'm going to put is not going to get me that significant result, and I can say that I have reached a point where I can just start reaping the benefits of this digital integration.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough one, right? You know, the hardest thing to do is look in the mirror, right? So sometimes you really need, in my mind, you have a plan and you have to create something that's measurable. And a lot of times that's not really done, right? And again, you have shorter term goals and you have longer term goals, and they need to be measurable, right? So, you know, you could say, well, you know, 3 months ago I wanted to get to this point. Now I'm at this point, and you hit pause and you look back in the mirror and you reflect and you say, is this what I expected? And if the answer is no, you need to figure out pretty quickly why and what happened, and then recorrect course. A lot of times there's a lot of pressure on you know in installing and getting these things up and running. And again, this is the point where you reach and you look at it and you say, well, it's not working, why? Or it is working, why? And having that, I'll say, ability to look in the mirror and reset, and then maybe change course. This, to me, this is a science, and science is never, never done evolving and changing and learning, right? And understanding if you're at a reasonable level, you got to understand what is reasonable. What does that mean? What are you trying to accomplish? And that's different for everybody. From a supply planning perspective, am I able to get my supply more reliably? From a demand planning perspective, my forecast accuracy is higher. From inventory, how much does it cost? Am I saving any money now? What's the plan? All of these things are very, I'll call it, specific to each individual and have different perspectives. And having good leadership to sit back and analyze all of these situations, get people in a room, and hey, what's working, what's not working, and most importantly, what's the vision? Are we on the road to support our vision and mission? And if the answer is yes, then great. If not, you got to recorrect course. It's that simple.
Yeah. No, and I think, right. I mean, this is an important aspect, that it's not just a KPI. You need to look across your cross-functional teams and try to identify that, hey, am I reaping benefits for each of them? What does it mean? And even tied back to your corporate goals to see if it is moving in the right direction or not. That to me are some of the key ways where you can measure whether you have reached a reasonable level of digital integration. And of course, continuous improvement should be a theme, because one of the things that I also experienced in my past work also is sometimes it's also difficult to isolate what has been improved because of your digital integration versus what has been happening because of natural market movements also, where you could simply be winning an award, and that doesn't necessarily mean that your sales have improved because of your digital integration. It's because maybe your competitor has dropped off. So those are some of the things that also becomes very tricky when it comes to measuring it. But I think you are right. I mean, if you have the right leadership, if you have the right KPIs and right methodology to measure it, we should be able to get that. So I mean, speaking of this, if I were to ask you that, hey, what are the top three improvement areas, or what are the top three KPIs that a brand owner can achieve if they are able to get to this digital integration with their CMOs, what would they be? I mean, I know this is a very uh, broad question, and it could mean different for a branded company versus a generic company, versus they could be in a growth phase, they could be in a launch phase. But in general, what are some of the top three or maybe five KPIs or areas of improvement you can imagine that can come with digital integration?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's when I from my perspective in supply chain, it's the reliability. And what drives reliability? It's transparency, it's long-term views, it's partnership, it's clarity, and really, when I say personal relationship, to me, I think that is the, for me, the areas where I think we have the most improvement and most need with a CDMO or a vendor, whichever you are. You know, are we really aligned on what we're doing? And for me, it's the supply reliability. In other words, your OTIF is, on time in full. I don't have a problem. I don't hear from you because your product shows up and it's all seamless. Those are the things that are, to me, in my perspective, and in my journey here, to ensure that we have the supply we need in North America, that happens, right? So the ones, bad supply reliability doesn't necessarily mean a bad CMO. Like, listen, you have situations where you have deviations, or you have, things come up for sure. But when they do, it's not it's not fully a surprise, because you have that transparency, and
Right.
you call with a solution, not with a problem, right? So those are the types of things, to me, where I see, I'll say the top three things that I think we can do, yeah, and work as partners on this to make things better.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, the supply reliability has been a very, very consistent theme, or a problem that we have faced. And I guess post COVID, there are so many disruptions that we have experienced. I mean, and there are so many random ones that happen which we can't even predict or control, like Suez Canal closure that we had, or
Mhm.
hurricane sitting in a plant and the operations shutting down. But you are right. It's not about that. Hey, these are things that are beyond your control, and sometimes you may not be able to fulfill your commitments. But if you are transparent, and if you are able to communicate the delays well in advance, or as soon as they happen to your customers, that goes a long way in terms of how they can react to those disruptions that are happening. So I
Yeah.
think, uh, I mean, one other question, and probably we are just getting close to the time as well. Where do you, in general, see opportunities for growth in this industry as it pertains to both the brand owners and the CDMOs, and where can probably this digitalization can help? Some thoughts on that would be superb.
Yeah, and to me, this goes into the resiliency side of the situation, right? How do we maintain resiliency? You mentioned earlier, there's things you can control, there's things you can't control. There are short-term situations that happen. Again, deviations, temp excursion, like those things happen, and you plan for those with safety stock, or you have an understanding about that, right? But the longer term things that happen, where you have a line that is down for maintenance that you don't communicate properly, or you say, you know what, yeah, we have our summer shutdown, but don't worry, we'll sell your product in August. Like, no, you won't. Like, don't even like these are situations, or same over the holidays over December, right? We know January supply will be slow. We know it'll come in because that's how it is. Don't lie about it. Don't plan for it. Be very open and honest. Here's your cutoff. Like, those types of resiliency things, to me, are where you know uh, you know vendor CDMO relationships really become the strongest. Yes, the Suez Canal gets blocked. Like, who foresaw that, right? But I could also say, we've developed ending drug shortage by predictive drug. What's going to be that. We have that. Guess what? It doesn't work, right? It doesn't end drug shortage, and we know why, right? So there's so much out there that we could work together and help each other in a situation to make lives easier, more resilient, and more transparent. And to me, those are the things we should focus on.
Yeah. No, I think, I mean, you hit some of the very key things there, which is drug shortages, getting resilient. I mean, and the list can go on and on. And to be very frank, I mean, time flies by when we talk about these topics. I mean, this topic has been close to my heart because I've been on the both sides of the table. I have seen where we have had full digital integration with our external suppliers, and I've reaped the benefits of that integration, and I have lived the other side where we were absolutely not integrated. So I have lived the hell of that also. So
Yep.
it's easy to lose track of time if we keep talking on these things. But sadly, all good things come to an end. So So thank you, Jeff, for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you on this orchestrating outcome series, and we'll stay in touch. And I hope I reconnect with you on this topic as the industry evolves to embrace supply chain digitalization in the upcoming times. And I guess thank you all for joining us on this episode of orchestrating outcomes. Stay tuned for more episodes as we try to bring industry leaders both from CMO and brand owners to share their valuable insights about supply chain digitalization, and hopefully this will help you inspire to accelerate your own journey and take this industry to the next level. Thank you.